So welcome, good morning. Hope you don't mind that I don't use the mask here. I'll try not to spit on you too. All right, we're gonna run through this pretty quickly. I think that probably you guys are pretty aware of what's going on with the AGR realignment, but all the same, we don't want to assume you guys know everything about this. Are you all technicians in here, is that correct? I'm a technician too, so I can completely relate to some of the questions you guys have. We're gonna get those answered the best we can in a generic format, but we welcome your questions on an individual basis as well. I've got some of the experts over here that can answer that. Now, while we don't have your records here with us now, we can certainly get back to you with some specific answers about how much time you have, does it pay to go over to be an AGR, all that good stuff. So let me just introduce some members of my team that are gonna be pretty critical. Mr. Scott Niles. He is the Deputy HRO. This is my last week as the Human Resources Officer. I'm going to the 111th Mission Support Group as the Commander, effective next Sunday, or this coming Sunday. He's going to be the temp, he's going to be temp promoted to the HRO position until they figure out what's going to be happening there at HRO and how they're going to fill that position. Ms. Kathleen Lentz, she's our Employee Relations Supervisor. She's going to be temp promoted into our deputy position while he is the HRO. We've got Ms. Julie Campbell, a member of her staff on Employee Relations. Also Ms. Janet Rosendo. She does retirements, so she's going to be doing a briefing for you about technician retirements and what you need to think about as you go to be an AGR and then maybe consider coming back to be a technician, buy your time back and then retire. And then Ms. Nicole Livey, she's your labor relations supervisor. She runs that section. Anything to do with bargaining unit members and their rights and all that. Obviously, there's a lot of concern across the board just as technicians going into the AGR realignment. So she's been handling a lot of questions on that basis. So don't be shy. Go ask them the questions that you have, whether it's about this or any other topic relating to that. We welcome all of that. So as always, Air Force says we have to have an agenda. That's what it is. We're just going to run through these really quickly because it's pretty well known what's going on here. That's the ratio that the Air National Guard wants us to get to. About 65% of the Air National Guard is projected, or that's what they wanted 4 years ago. That's across the Air National Guard. I talked to a state last week. At the end of this year that we're coming up to right now, FY21 realignment, they're only going to be at 40% AGR and the rest technicians. So we're much healthier than that. By the end of this one, we'll be at about 60%. We may not go above that. Next year, we may not realign anybody. We don't know. So it depends on what they palm for us. So we're pretty healthy. Tells you why the certain positions were picked by the FAMs. This is the one for this current year. 111th, I don't know why they're not done yet. They only had 7, but what's interesting here is the 193rd, they had a slew of them. And of course, they've got some AFSOC funded ones. They actually are realigning their AFSOC funded ones on 1 October instead of 1 April. So that's pretty interesting. Those are the considerations that we took into effect when we were working with the commanders. What they did is the Air Force, the FAM, so the functional area managers down at Guard Bureau said, this is the mission system that I need, or the weapon system that I need to have positions realigned in. And then they took those positions, put them on a pick list. I'm sure you guys have heard of the pick list. Sent it out to the wings, and then your commanders went in and said, not this position, but that position, not this position. So they got to, kind of play into or choose what positions. The bottom line is super important. Whenever we made decisions about this, we wanted to make sure that it was a repeatable decision. And I can tell you that in HRO, that's what we do across the board. We never make decisions based on what's good, not that we don't make decisions based on what's good for the person. We always keep that in mind, but we don't make it only based on that. It's got to be good for the agency. It's got to be repeatable so that what we do for Chief Bear is what we can do for him too, because it's repeatable. So that's kind of our vision and our mission statement across the board in HRO. Some of the other considerations, we did some direct realignments. You guys, I believe, have some direct realignments that we're going to be able to do. Control grades obviously play a lot into it, so we'll talk a little bit about that, and I can answer any questions. This is super important for you guys. It's important that you really understand USERRA. And if you go to our GKO site, you'll see that we've made a couple of toolkits out there. One for National Guard employees, an employee toolkit, and then a supervisor toolkit. And I think the USERRA handbook is in both. So it's very important that you understand what your, what your rights are according to USERRA. And I'm sure that you guys are very familiar with it. A lot of people think that that 5-year USERRA right starts over every time you start into a position. It does not. It's 5 years cumulative, added up all together with an agency. So if you've been in the Pennsylvania Air National Guard as a technician and you've gone in to do 30 days or more, that's not exempt, and there's a list of all types of duty that is exempt. But if you've got, say you've been on a temp AGR before and it was sandwiched by Title 32 technician time, that is not exempt and that counts up toward USERRA. So important to know where you are with that, because as you go into a realignment position, don't think you can sit there for 5 years and then you're going to come back and restore, because you might have gotten yourself past your 5-year date. So it's very important that you understand what that is. And while you guys may think it's one date, our employee relations section needs to make sure that all the paperwork is in line as well. So I would say if you want to write down one task, that's the one thing that you'll need to do first. Go into your MyBiz account, look at your SF50s, and make sure that your absent US, so anytime that you were on military LEWOP, and your return to duty SF50s are all in there, and they match your orders, because if they're not in there, then that means we don't have them. Okay, so it means we didn't have the E52s put into DCPDS to get all that absent US time return to duty put in the system accurately. That's part one. Part two is, have you already bought back that time? So some of the folks will be up here to talk through that later. So those are two important considerations, that if you are considering coming back to the technician side, buying back this AGR period that you're about ready to go on, you want to make sure everything else is in order already, and you want to get that started before your AGR orders start, because you can't start a buyback process while you're AGR. So important considerations. So let's talk about restoring. And you'll see this in the frequently asked questions too. Hopefully, if you didn't get a copy of them already, that you'll be getting them soon, and I'm sure they're going to be posted somewhere where you can see them. Will you be allowed to restore back to a position twofold from there? Just to retire or to continue a technician career? So let's talk about the first one, just to retire. Yeah, we can restore you, even if your positions are gone, because remember, once your AGR position comes live on 1 April, your technician position immediately falls off. So where do we restore you to? If you're going to buy back your time, and obviously I just said I'm not going to be the HRO and when you guys come back, if you're going to buy back your time, please don't think that we're going to keep you on the books for 5 years to allow you to buy that time back. Be ready to buy it back. Have the cash set aside, or be ready to put it on a credit card and buy back that time. We'll let you sit there for 2, 3, 4 months while that happens, and then retire, okay? Because we don't have the position, and you guys didn't have as much of an issue with civ pay this year as the other two wings did, but obviously the civ pay budget gets cut as soon as those technician positions are cut. So can the wing really afford to have you sit on their books while you buy back their time? So those are important considerations to make. Part two of that question was, can I restore and then continue my technician tour? Maybe. So as you'll see, it says there, the agency must attempt to restore to the same position if possible, or to a like position. The positions are all gone. So what do? We look at your resume and we say, this is what you qualify for. You were a GS11 before, or a WG whatever. We're going to offer you this position. If you turn that position down, we terminate you within 30 days. If we can't offer you any position at all, we give that case file to OPM, and then they look for federal agencies in the local area, and then offer you a position there. And then again, if you take it, great. If you don't, you're terminated within 30 days. Your employment is terminated within 30 days. And if they don't have a position at all, then unfortunately your employment is terminated within 30 days. So is it a risk? For sure. So that's where I'm saying we want to have individual conversations with you to make sure that you understand everything as you go into this realignment, and understand what it looks like when you come back. Because it's not as utopic as people would think. Oh, I'm going to go do this for 3 years. I'm going to come back. I'm going to sit there for 3 years and buy my time back, and then I'll retire. Or maybe the position's not there. So please have the conversation with us. We don't intend to harm any technician because that's by NDAA. We cannot harm any technician. We're not forcing people to realign, but we want to help you get to what's best for you in your career so that when you're sitting on the beach with an umbrella drink, you're super happy about the choices that you made and you've got the money coming in that you think that you would. So that's kind of what USERRA does for you. Here's what we did from the outset. As far as how we advertised, we restricted the current technician announcements, and I think you'll still see us. We announce all of our technician positions, our Title 32 technician positions across the Pennsylvania Air National Guard are all in depth with rollover. And that's because of the realignment. Once the realignment's done, so hopefully starting this next year, we can start labeling them permanent because a lot of people like permanent positions better than they like in-depth positions. So that's one of the actions that we took. We did the direct realignments. We're still doing them. It's one of our favorite things to do because it's the easy button, which we like pushing. Vacancy announcements, just be ready for when they're advertised. If we can't do a direct realignment, we'll advertise it. Just be ready with all of your information to be uploaded. Management-directed reassignments, we do those in cases where a technician does not want to realign and we need to, sometimes we take the AGR resource and we move that to another technician position and realign something else, or sometimes we offer to move the technician if they want to move. So there's a couple of ways that we can take care of that. Management-directed change to lower grade, we don't ever want to do that. And we haven't yet, so I don't anticipate that we will in the future. VERA VSIP, some of the other states have used VERA VSIP. No one's used a RIF because of the language in the NDAA. We were prevented from doing a RIF. We didn't want to do a RIF. We think that we can get through this whole thing without having to do a reduction in force. Thank goodness. Nobody wants to do that. That makes sense that we would do a direct realignment. So what we do is if we look in the shop and we see one technician and they're the only one in that PD and nobody else can lay claim to that AGR resource, that's our direct realignment offer. And so we email them a memo signed by me. Hey, would you like to directly realign? Absolutely. So it's hard to see the rank on these new uniforms. So we've got an E8, E9. Okay, well, yeah, he wants to direct realign, but there's no control grade. So we're kind of waiting for those. Right now we have a real stoppage point at is it at the E9 level 2? Do you know, Chief? More E8s. That's where we're really stuck across the board, is at the E8 level. So what do? Do you then make a choice to take off a stripe and get in the AGR position? Yep, you sure could do that because then you're at least in the E8 or an E7 in an E8 position and just waiting for a control grade to come in the future. It's a choice that you'll have to make, or you say, no, absolutely not, I'm not going to take off a stripe. So then we have to take that AGR resource and put it somewhere else. Or you just stay a technician until we can, get that control grade for you and we temp with that resource somewhere else. So there's a couple of options there. If there are more than one technicians in a PD in a shop, we advertise that. Because just because it landed on your technician resource, that AGR resource came and it landed on his, but you three are also in that same PD in the same shop, we're going to advertise it. It doesn't automatically mean it's his, no offense to you, of course. But it's only fair that we advertise it to everybody that can qualify for that. And then management selects who they want to select. And then if it was landed on his position, but he was not the one selected, then we can move him, we can realign the AGR position to you instead. So there's a couple of options that we can do, but we only do it when we have full concurrence from everybody, once that selection has been made. Vacancy announcements, we restrict it as tight down as the wing determines. Colonel Lehue is the final say on how narrow that is or how wide that is. We restrict it down to the shop, sometimes the squadron, and then if we get no takers, then we start opening up to the wing or even statewide, nationwide. That's kind of what we're doing. There we go. Management-directed reassignment, if we have to move somebody, that's what we look for. Pretty pretty much the same as what we've always done. We don't ever want to do a lower grade. Nobody ever wants to go down. Vera and VSIP, in the future we might have to use those, but we're not anticipating that we need to at this point because we've got enough takers for our positions and enough positions for the remaining technicians. So far we're good. When we did the RIF back at the 111th, back in whatever it was, 2009, 2010, we did use both Vera and VSIP and had some very happy people who retired early or separated early with a big pocket of money. So it's a pretty cool tool to use. So here's the Tech AGR comparison. No offense to anybody here, but I think we're all seasoned enough in here. That means old. Seasoned enough to hear we know these differences. So it's really important for our younger airmen especially to understand the difference between being a technician and being an AGR. A lot of good things on both sides. Here's your resources right here. We are always willing to get input from any of your wing leaders, and hopefully we're going to have a meeting with your commanders on Thursday to kind of hear how this is going. But here's your resources. You guys have a union steward program out here that's pretty healthy. That's something to be proud of because they are certainly a proponent for the bargaining unit members and help bring information to us to help us do this process better. So I would urge you to continue using them as much as you can. The top bullet there, and you're going to hear this in one of the next briefings too, if you haven't been on GRB, that's the government retirement benefits. It's the new platform that replaced EBIS. You can still go to your EBIS, the Employee Business Information System. You can still go to that link and it will take you right to this new platform. It's a pretty cool tool. It's got those big icons that we all like now. It says retirement, benefits, name, a bunch of other things. But then as you're looking at the screen, if you go to the top right corner, it'll have your total, what, Kathleen, do you know what it's called? Your total compensation package? Is that what it's called, that top link on GRB? I think so. We're going to go with it. Total compensation statement or benefits or something like that. But there's a link just hidden on the top right. It tells you what you have right now for your benefits, how much money it's costing you, what package you have for dental, for your health benefits. It's like a multi-page document, probably 8 pages. It goes through your retirement amount. If you retire at this age or that age, it goes through all of that stuff on there. So go take a look. It's kind of just a long document that explains your total compensation package. And for us as technicians, that's a really neat one document that shows everything. But that's a great system to go in to look at what you have right now and to make any changes. Our state POCs, Mr. Anthony Demsko, unfortunately, is quarantined right now. He's your AGR branch manager for the air side. If you remember, well, you guys probably don't because you're technicians, but we had one person doing air AGR things. We now have 4 people doing air AGR program. So as AGRs, you're going to be well taken care of. But he's your branch manager, and then Miss Kathleen Lentz sitting in the back, employee relations. So that's what I have. That's just the overview, and then we're going to get into specific retirement information. Do you guys have any questions for me that you want me to run into right now? Yes, sir.
I have a question. In regards to the USERRA, so you're talking about if somebody decides to use it and return technician. So my question is if you're in a position currently and you're looking to bid a position that's of a higher grade technician, but it's transitioning AGR prior to that time, and you bid that position, if you utilized USERRA, what would you return to? A comparable position as that AGR, or would you return to your previous grade?
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So you're a technician now, you're going to apply for another technician position, which is realigning to AGR. Okay, so if you would have to return to that higher graded technician position, you would have to be in that position as a technician before you realigned, because then you own that position basically, and that's what you would go back to, so long as it's not a temp promotion. Some fuzzy rules, not fuzzy rules, but there's some other things that we have to consider then. So what do you know?
I'm a WL.
Okay.
The position that I'm referring to is a WS.
Okay.
But it will never be a WS. It's going to go straight AGR.
Okay, I see. So you're saying that you are WL right now, you're going to apply for an AGR on top of a WS position. So you would go back to being, oh no, Kathleen, help me out here. In my understanding, you would go back to being a WL because you were never that WS, but I see what you're saying. You're sitting on top of a WS. Okay. So, so her, okay, perfect. That's good. Thank you. So the staffers are upstairs, so they're working on something else right now. But you have a very valid point because you're sitting on top of that WS. So do we then restore you to that WS equal position or that other one? So let me owe you an answer on that. So as soon as the next briefing starts, I'll run upstairs and I'll get you something for that. That's a great question, a great scenario. Any others?
Chris, on that same thread,
Yes.
did elevator principal apply in that case?
Quite likely. So the technician is not harmed. It would have progressed up as if they were never gone. I think that's what we would have to do in this situation.
Okay.
Yep. Nobody else? Okay, perfect. Next briefer, I believe, is Miss Janet Rosendo. But she was trying to pawn it off to Miss Julie Campbell. So I'm not sure who got the tail pinned on the donkey. All right, thank you, everybody.
In the back? All right. So my name is Miss Janet Rosendo. I'm your retirement specialist and also currently your military deposit specialist. Who here hasn't had the retirement brief before? Everybody has had this brief before, at least once? All right. So under the retirement system, we have 4 retirement pots that you can put into, CSRS, FERS, FERS Ray, and FERS Frey. I think we only have 1 person currently in the Guard or as a technician that is still under CSRS. Under FERS, you contributed 0.8%, and if you came on as a tech between 1987 and 2012, you would fall under FERS. For FERS Frey, you contributed 3.1%, and if you came on during 2013, January to December, and under FERS Frey, it's 4.4%, and it's January 2014 till present. So there are a couple of retirement groups that you can fall into. Disability, you can have your optional, your voluntary retirement, and you can also have your discontinued retirement. For your disability retirement, all you have to have is 18 months as a technician, 18 months, right? So if you fall under Title V, for the disability retirements, normally when I do a disability retirement, I'm putting you in as a regular disability retirement, right? But for dual status employees, you are also entitled to what's called the special provision, which you guys call a public law disability, right? So if you're found that you are ineligible under the regular disability, they'll put you under public law, and that's only for Title V. That's only for dual status employees. Title 32, it doesn't count. Public law is not an option. All right? In order to be creditable for non-disability retirements, you have to have 5 years vested. Anybody doesn't understand what that means? Okay, so you have to be here for 5 years. It doesn't have to be consecutively. You can take a break, you can come back, finish out your time, but you have to be here for 5 years in order to pull a retirement. 5 years, all right? So when I brief, I also tell people that their military deposits, you can't use your military deposits to get you to that 5-year benchmark. You have to be here for 5 years, and then say you were active duty, you were basic training AIT. You're in basic training AIT for a year. You're here for 5 years, right? You buy back that year. Once you hit that 5 years, you're now here for 6, right? You just jumped up to 6. Everybody understand that? All right. So what is usually included as a creditable civilian service under FERS? So it's a federal position in where deductions were being contributed. So they were taking out retirement contributions out of that paycheck, right? So for federal service performed before 1989, that was not subject to FERS deduction and a deposit was paid. So if you were a temp tech prior to 1989, right, you can buy that time back. Anybody here with a temp tech before 1989? All right. And also, your unused sick leave cannot be used to get you to that benchmark. What do I mean by that? So you have unused sick leave on the books, right? You can use the sick leave. It's calculated to give you a higher annuity as far as creditable service, but you can't use it to get to that benchmark, whatever that benchmark is that you're looking for. Understand that? All right. All right. Anybody here not know what their MRA is, which is your minimum retirement age? There's no wrong answer. All right. So here is your MRA, your minimum retirement age. This is the age that you have to retire. Well, you don't have to. This is the year that you can retire, right? However, you cannot retire earlier to these dates. So in my case, my MRA will be 57. If I'm going too fast, let me know. You good? All right. So types of retirement under FERS. So you have your optional voluntary retirement. So you have to be MRA and 30, 60 and 20, or 62 and 5. So with a voluntary optional retirement, it's an unreduced retirement, and you're getting your annuity, it's immediate. It's an immediate annuity. So once you retire, you start getting your monthly payments. So an early reduced, also known as MRA in 10, what that is, it is a reduced retirement, right? So you're going to take 5% penalty for each year that you're under the age of 62. A lot of people use the MRA in 10, say they have health benefits, right, and they want to take those health benefits with them into retirement. They'll choose to keep the MRA in 10, but it's a 5% reduction for the lifetime of that annuity, and it's a permanent reduction. All right? So you're involuntary and discontinued, which means, okay, I've hit age 60 in the military, they're no longer keeping me, they're putting me out. That will fall under involuntary or discontinued. So in order to fall under involuntary or discontinued, you have to have 50 and 20 years of service, or any age and 25 years of service. All right? So the deferred or the postponed, you can defer your retirement. So say you said, okay, I fall under MRA in 10, but I don't need that health benefit. I want to postpone my retirement. You can postpone your retirement until the age of 62, and that's when you'll start to collect it. However, with the deferred and the postponed retirement, you have to apply through OPM, right? And you have to have at least 5 years vested in order to get that. So, and I told you with the disability retirement, it's any age and 18 months of creditable service. All right, so your computation date, it's used to determine retirement eligibility to calculate retirement annuity or a pension. And it may not be the same as your Leave SCD. What I tell people to do is go onto GRB platform. Go onto GRB platform, look at what your retirement SCD could look like. However, on GRB platform, what you have to keep in mind is the numbers that it's showing you is for all your military deposits paid, all right? So without your military deposits paid, that number is going to look a little bit different. Understood? All right. All right, so the annuity supplement. The benefit is paid until age 62 to certain FERS employees who retire before age 62 and are entitled to an immediate annuity. So it's typically for people that are the MRA in 30, the 60 and 20, or special provision for law enforcement firefighters, or if you are at your MRA and you fall under involuntary or discontinued. Normally, when I do a retirement estimate, I don't do the annuity supplement. And the reason why I don't do that is because it's governed by Social Security. I don't know what that number is going to be. So Social Security will go ahead, when I submit your application, ABCC will give you a call and say, okay, you're entitled to the annuity supplement. Here's how much the supplement will be. But I normally don't put it on the estimate, but I'll tell you that you're eligible for the supplement. Also, the supplement is subject to an earning test, which is also established by Social Security. And again, ABCC will go over that with you. We already talked about sick leave. Your unused sick leave is added to the length. It's calculated in whole months, all right? At the time of retirement, if you have annual leave left on the books, the annual leave will be paid out in a lump sum payment. What does that look like? It might look like a whole lot of money in the beginning, right? But they tax it as additional income. What that looks like for you is about 40% right off the bat. Worst case scenario, okay? This is the computation for the annuity. If you're under age 62, it's your high 3 average salary by 1 year of service. If you're age 62 and older, it's 1.1. And then the special provision is a little bit different. It's 1.7 for the first 20 years, and then 1% for service exceeding the 20 years of service. So for your FEHB and your FAGLI, you have to be enrolled for 5 years prior to retirement. You have to be retiring on an immediate annuity, and you have to have it at retirement, right? TRICARE and Champus also falls under that FEHB. So when I send a retirement estimate, one of the things I send is a pamphlet for survivor annuity, right? So if you have, if you decide that you don't want to take the survivor annuity for your spouse into retirement, then your spouse no longer have the ability to have FEHB into retirement. So if you do away with the survivor annuity, they don't have FEHB, all right? Any questions on this slide? All right, so what I normally need to do a retirement to begin the retirement process, if you're doing a voluntary retirement, I need the intent to retire memo. I need an HRO Form 35 is what I send to you. It has a bunch of list of documents that I would need back. I would need the 1199A, your DD-214s, your paid in full letters, all that stuff. What I tell people, if you know that you're retiring within the next 6 to 8 months, you need to start gathering this information because it takes that long sometimes to get it. If you don't have military deposits paid, this is the time that you want to start looking at your military deposits 6 to 8 months out. It takes about 6 months just to do one deposit. If you're doing a disability retirement, normally OPM requires that the medical documentation, if you're doing a medical retirement, they require that the medical documentation is put on a CD, and that's what I send forward to OPM. Yep. Yep.
The paid in full letter from DFAS,
Mm-hmm.
you have to get a hold of them to get that, or when it's paid in full, do they automatically send it to you guys and it's uploaded?
No, so normally if you're done paying with a deposit, we don't know at HRO. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to say, hey, Janet, I'm done paying on my military deposit. Can you please request a paid in full letter? You can also go and request a paid in full letter from from DFAS, right? What they'll do is they'll send it to your home of record. You need to send it to us because if we don't have proof, it's not shown that, hey, you have the creditable amount of time that you bought back. So once it's sent to you, you need to send it to us and we'll upload it to EOPF. So I'm going to talk about military deposit in the next slide, in the next brief. All right, so on this slide, I tell people all the time, military deposit could positively affect your annuity. Okay, so the first column here is me, all right? So my MRA is age 57. However, I didn't buy my time back. So therefore, I couldn't retire until age 60 in order, if I wanted to get 30 years, I should say. I couldn't retire until age 60. However, with me buying my time back, I can now retire at age 57 on my MRA. It didn't give me a lot more money. It only gave me $25 more, but now I can retire exactly at my MRA, which was 3 years earlier than I had planned, right? The next column is for a person who started really late. So he didn't buy his time back. He cannot retire until he's age 60. No ifs, ands, or buts. If he wants 30 years, 60 is it. But with him buying his time back, look how much his retirement went up. It went from $1,450 to $1,700 a month, okay? So just bear in mind that it can either do both. You can retire your MRA and get a higher annuity, or you can retire your MRA, all right? Any questions on this slide? All right, so here are some websites. The GRB platform is a really, really good one. Like I said, if you go there, it'll give you a benchmark of where you are. However, you want to make sure that you know that it's with all your military deposits paid if you're looking at what your retirement SCDs look like. And with EOPF, you can go into EOPF. So say you're not sure, you know, what you can buy back if you have DD-214s. What you'll want to look for in your EOPF is you want to look for your absent US SF-50s and your return to duty SF-50s, okay? Those are the periods that you can buy back, the periods that you went absent US and return to duty and your active duty time. Any questions? All right. The next slide is your military deposit slide. So what is a military deposit? It's money paid into the FERS retirement system for active and honorable military service. It can either be Title 10 or it can be Title 32. Title 32 periods are periods that, hey, I'm here in a technician status, I was deployed, or I went to a school, I'm back. That middle piece is Title 32, okay? So with military deposit, you're just filling in those gaps. For Title 32, you're just filling in those gaps in your retirement, okay? So your military deposit time could count towards your FERS retirement, but not until you pay a military deposit. You don't pay a military deposit, you don't get credit. Simple as that. We talked about you have to be here for 5 years in order to be vested, in order to pull a retirement. So say you're here just for 5 years, right? You're here for 5 years, you decide, okay, I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna go somewhere else. That money just sits there, right? At retirement, you're gonna apply through OPM, you're gonna get something, even if it's gas money or beer money, whatever it is, but you'll get something after that 5 years. So we talked about when you buy back the military time, you might reduce your retirement age, and you also might increase the amount of the monthly annuity, or in some cases, you might achieve both. We talked about absent US time. Absent US time, basically, I normally say it's like a Swiss cheese. You know, you look at a Swiss cheese, you have whole pieces and then you have little holes, right? So you're here, you might think you're here. Wait, let me ask, how long have you been here?
Some years.
Have you had any deployments? Okay. So for him, he's been here for 20-something years. He's had, say, 4 deployments. So that's 4 years, right? Say he did not buy, so I'm going to say you're here for 20 years. Let's say 20. And then he left for 4 deployments. but he didn't buy that time back, those 4 years. How many years has he been here now? 16. So on paper, it might look like you had 20 years, but without you filling back those gaps, you're now dropped yourself down to however many years you were gone, right? Because you weren't contributing to the retirement system. Everybody understand that? All right. All right, so military service before 1957, it's called post-56, and that's prior to you becoming a federal employee. And then periods under USERA, it's after becoming a federal employee. A period of service includes consecutive periods where there's no break in service. As little as 1 day will break the service into 2 periods. So say you were put on orders, they brought you back for 1 day, and then put you back on order the next day. Those are 2 different periods of service, right? It's not consecutive. So you have to buy those back separately. So for the post-56, on January 1957, military service became covered by Social Security. And so due to this, you need to make a deposit for military service performed after 1956. And we said that this was post-56 military deposit. So for post-56, it's 3% of your military pay earned plus interest. You start accruing interest on year 2. However, it's not applied until year 3. So if you don't pay it off before year 3, you start accruing that interest every year. The interest varies from year to year. I don't know what it's going to be. It's governed by Social Security. This year it might be 2%. Next year it might be 3. I'm not sure. All right, we already talked about that. All right, so for Title 10 and Title 32 service, that interrupts civilian service. So if you made a deposit, you're going to get credit, right? You don't make a deposit, no credit. USERA, it's basically the same. It's 3% of your basic military paid earned plus interest, or whatever your first contributions would have been for the civilian service if you had not entered into the military service, whichever is less, okay? So if your military pay is less, that's what they're gonna calculate it off. If your technician pay would have been less, that's what they're gonna calculate it off, all right? So your Title 10 time is pre-federal employment. Actually, it can be both pre-federal employment and during federal employment. But most of the times, it's pre-federal employment, okay? Title 32 normally falls into line when you've been attacked. I said when you went on a deployment, went to schools, that normally falls under Title 32. So it must be, the time must be honorable. It must state that on the DD-214. So I know some DD-214s have where the characterization of service is, there's no characterization. So if there's no characterization on that DD-214, you want to have that DD-214 corrected. It may take a while. I'm not sure how long it takes. Do you know how long it takes?
No, because they have to submit it themselves through MyPers, so it varies based off what information needs to be changed.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then if there is a DD-214, then I can accept a statement of service, right? If you have orders and you didn't have a DD-214, so they just gave you a copy of orders, then I can take statements of service. But if a DD-214 was issued, you have to have the DD-214 corrected. Service that's not creditable, dishonorable discharge, clemency discharge, uncharacterized, which isn't a bad thing, you just have to have it changed. And like you said, you can submit that through MyPers, and then officer dismissals. Completing a military service deposit. So I know this is really hard to read, okay? I know Chief Lenz had passed out some papers. If you choose to go ahead and request your own earnings, this is a way to do it, okay? But normally, we don't have a problem doing it for you at HRO. So what we would need is a copy of your DD-214, right? Copies 2, 4, or 7, right? If you don't have DD-214s, orders accompanied with statements of service, and normally you can request the statements of service from your FSS. They'll be happy to assist with that, right? If you don't have statements of service, right, then I can also use your LESs. I can use LESs, I can use DD-214s, I can use orders with statements of service, right? You'll send all of those to me. We will go ahead and we will forward that to DFAS. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks for them to send me back anything, because it takes them 30 days just to view an application, 30 days for everything, and then 2 weeks to send me the earnings statement. Once I have those earnings, I'll go ahead and I'll put them in and I'll send you what's called an MSD worksheet. It'll tell you exactly what your SCDs are, what your interest accrual dates are, and how much you have to pay back, all right? And I'll go ahead and I'll submit the application for you right away. With me submitting an application doesn't mean that you have to pay on that deposit. It's entirely up to you. Just know that it's out there, right? You don't have to pay on it. It's just sitting out there accruing interest until you decide, hey, I want to pay on it. And you will know when I submit an application because it will show up in block 20 of your LES, right? It'll say, okay, here's how much you owe. It'll show in block 20 of your LES. Also, when you're done, it'll show in block 20 of your LES. It'll say amount paid owed 0. And then that's a great time to say, hey, Janet, request a paid in full letter for me, right? You'll say, hey, I want to pay it in full letter. Again, it's going to take 6 weeks for them to send it to you, and then you send it to me. I upload it to EOPF. Questions? All right, we talked about all of that. So for the military deposit, like I said, all consecutive periods of military service must be paid. A break in service, more than 1 day of separation. If you're missing SF50s, then I can use your LESs, which we talked about. And all military deposits must be paid in full prior to retirement. We talked about that. This is just reiterating on the retirement slide, basically how military deposits can affect your annuity and your resources. Any questions? Well, I did good. No questions. Great. Thank you. Thanks.
I think that's it for us, unless you guys have any other questions specific to this, or feel free to hang around. We can answer some one-on-one questions if you'd like. And then just spread the word. We're doing this again at 1300 this afternoon. So whoever else needs to come in here, we'll be happy to talk with them. Yes, sir.
So as far as this question, so let's just say WL, he takes on this AGR supervisor position.
Yes.
He wants to go back. He could go back to the WL position.
Yes.
And the supervisor position be advertised as a technician position. He could apply for it, correct?
That is correct. So let me just restate it so we get it for the camera. So if we play out the scenario as he depicted, he's WL now, he applies for a WS AGR position, he restores to the WL, he can then later reapply for a WS technician position. That is correct. Yes. Yes. Any other questions, scenarios, good things? Yes, sir.
So, early at the beginning, you had mentioned that
I lied. I'm just kidding.
you could restore prior to retirement, like if you go AGR for say 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're ready to retire. You said you could restore or buy back that federal time even if there isn't a position to go back to?
Is that?
Yeah, and I hesitate to, yeah, I can promise the world to everybody, and then I'm leaving the position in 5 days, so, and then he's got to make it all happen. So, yeah, so theoretically, I mean, we don't want to harm anybody who's got a lot of years in the technician system already. So, yes, if the tech budget is healthy enough within the wing to support you coming back for a finite period of time, then yes, you should be able to come back and buy your time back. Now, that's a huge risk. I mean, I'm a technician with a lot of years in the technician program. Would I love to go AGR and then be able to restore back to buy back that time? Yes. So, so long as you're having the conversations with the powers that be, and so long as you're projecting, because you're not going to restore at the same time he's going to restore or he's going to restore. So can we fit you in the budget for this specific period of time? I would think the answer probably could be yes, depending on technicians that are deployed. So there's a little bit of a lapse rate to pay you as a technician. But don't think you can sit there for 6 months, 9 months, a year, because that just is not feasible to ask for the wing to do that. So it's a big risk.
Well, let's say that you're ready to retire after.
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
You know that your minimum retirement age is going to end. You're going to be your minimum retirement age by the time your AGR ends.
Mm-hmm.
Then
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
could be an issue.
Right. So the key is if you're voluntarily retiring, as Ms. Rosendo just said, you've got to buy it back before you retire as a tech. So whatever, does that mean that you just make a one-sum lump payment with a credit card? Or does that mean you have the cash set aside and go, I'm able to make it and here's my withdrawal, right from my account? So just be prepared. And that process can take up to about 6 months. So I would think at a minimum and at a maximum, that would be what the wing would want you to sit at, and what might take the paperwork to do. So, sometimes DFAS works faster than that. And I'll tell you what, so Ms. Rosendo just mentioned you could do it 2 ways. You could do your buyback through our office, or you could do your buyback right through DFAS. You're like, why would I wait for HRO to process this stuff? They never answer me back. I do strongly encourage you to reach out to us and do the buyback through us, because even if it's off by 1 day, the whole process has to be done again. So if you are working directly with DFAS and decide to buy back your time through them, and you say, this is my time, and they say, yeah, that looks right, but they're not looking at maybe when you went absent US and maybe when you restored back to duty, because maybe it was, you don't have to restore back the day your orders end, you can restore back a certain amount of time later. It's got to be that specific. So if you buy back that time and then later it's determined that that was incorrect, it has to be readjusted. So I would definitely encourage you to work through us. It might be a little bit longer, but in the end, it's going to be shorter because it'll make your retirement process go faster because it'll be accurate. So, yeah, you should be able to restore back and buy back your time.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
Last one.
Okay, that's okay.
Once you convert, I understand that you can't buy back your technician time.
You mean realign?
I understand that you can't buy back the current time you're doing until you're done.
Correct. That is correct.
Can you buy back previous periods while you're AGR?
You want to start that. You want to start the paperwork while you're a technician. And then, yes, you can make other arrangements to pay that. But you want to start it while you're a tech. Yep. Miss Janet Rosendo. And she'll show you where to go from there. Who's doing the buyback? The buyback's aside from retirement right now. And who? And April Bush. Okay, but she's transitioning out. So yeah, Miss Janet Rosendo. Janet with 2 T's. Look her up. She's the one that'll help you out with all that. Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your time, your attention. Look through the FAQs. There's a lot of good questions there. We did this brief at the 193rd in July. We added the entire military buyback question or section to the FAQs. So what this group or this wing got a year ago in July is much different than what the FAQs are now. So they're much more updated based on that. So any questions that you guys have for us, shoot them through Chief Bear and his crew, and we'll add them to the FAQs and keep posting them out there. Okay? Thank you for your time and your attention, and feel free to stop by and ask any questions you have.